Welcome to another episode of Creating Cultures that Outperform. I'm Frank Wander. I'm here with my co-host Terri Mays, and today we're going to be talking about burnout. We're doing a series on how to create cultures that outperform without burning people out. Nothing could be more important. I think that, we've got to stop glorifying overwork. People are burning out all over the place. It's leading to a lot of resignations. It's very, very unhealthy. And today we're going to really focus on what is burnout and what are some of the warning signs. Next, we're going to cover additional topics on this, and we'll fill you in at the end so that you can tune in. We're here every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Hope to see you each week. We have great episodes. And so let's talk about burnout, Tara. What is burnout anyway?
Burnout. So what is it? It's really this chronic state of exhaustion, where you get to this place where you're just completely wiped out. You have been exhausted of all your joy, all of your fulfillment, all
Yeah.
of your happiness. You really go into this negative state where you're cynical and snippy and argumentative and all of those
Mhm.
things that you don't want to be, whether it's at work or at home. And the thing about burnout is it impacts both sides. So it's not just about impacting you at work and then you go home and you're wonderful, or impacting you at home and then you go to work and you're wonderful. It's a bleed over situation. So if you're burnt out, that burnout is going to impact you at home. It's going to impact you at work. It's going to impact you as an individual. So these are just situations where you feel overwhelmed or you feel underwhelmed. In some cases, a lot of times we think about burnout from the perspective of people being overloaded,
Yeah,
but sometimes you can be burnt out
that's
because
a great point.
just aren't doing things that matter to you. You aren't doing things that are important. You aren't doing things that are meaningful, that bring you joy and fulfillment. You don't feel like you're making a difference because we're hardwired to do that. Each one of us has a purpose for being here, and we're hardwired to fulfill that purpose. And we were just doing things, going through the motions and doing things that don't matter to us, that don't mean anything, they literally start to burn out that joy and fulfillment that we have. And ultimately, you end up with this frustration fatigue where you're just absolutely wiped out and you're tired all the time.
Yeah, it's interesting. Burnout sounds like some, made up term that's not very scientific. But the reality is that people who are under stress, their body releases cortisol in response. It gives you a little more energy. It's anti-inflammatory in property. And so a little bit is a good thing. But when you're constantly under stress and you always have this cortisol in your body and you're not able to remove it, you start to become stressed out, which leads to this burnout. And
Yeah.
burnout is this just chronic stress that's leveling a real physiological and emotional toll on your body. You start to really feel it. It's a very serious matter and it's cumulative. It's not just work, it's work plus life. There's stress in both areas. Let's be real about it. And so, on a cumulative basis, people get stressed out. These are tough times in society, no question about it. There are a lot of things going on. There are a lot of pressures in the workplace, there are economic pressures. That leads to more pressure at home in many cases. So, this is a time where leaders have to be very aware of burnout. And we're going to be in the series talking about what are some of the things you should be aware of. What can you do as a leader to at least make sure that in the workplace, you're minimizing the impact of some of this stress and burnout, and you become aware of this as a physiological phenomenon that you can have a direct impact on both positively and negatively.
Yeah. And Frank, I think you bring out a great point about the
Thank
hormonal
you.
side of this. We like to think that women are the hormonal ones, but
Yeah.
when it comes to stress and burnout, this is an equal opportunity offender. Men
Yes.
and women alike can be
Super, super.
hormonal because of this cortisol that gets released in the blood. But the overall impact that it's having on the body is it creates this level of stress where your body is really trying to fight. And so your body goes into this state where your heart is pumping much faster than it should be. You're not in an overall state of rest. Your body is in this heightened state. And when you stay in that state too long, you cause physical damage to your heart by being in that state for too long. It really causes disruption in the entire body.
Super unhealthy.
Your body, your physical body, your mind, your emotional state, everything is on heightened alert. And so you really have to be careful with stress and burnout to make sure that you're not staying in that state where your body is trying to process this extra cortisol in your body for too long. You can't stay in that state for very long. Your body wasn't designed to handle that much stress. And so when you get in that state, it's really important to identify it, recognize what the triggers are for you so that you're able to slow down the process, bring your heart rate back down to a normal rhythm, and really start to deal with some of the stressors. In some cases, eliminate them. Some of them you can eliminate. So, what do you do about that? And we're going to talk about some of those things that you can do in this episode. We're going to give you some tips to help you with this because we know that it's something that happens in everyday life. You know, people are experiencing this everywhere.
Unavoidable, right?
Yeah, being in a pandemic really put everybody in a state of stress and burnout. You know, I was absolutely over wearing a mask. Like I was just tired of it. I was sick of it. So when we finally got to the point where we didn't have to wear a mask anymore, I was super excited. But during that period where I had to wear a mask, I had to realize that this is causing me stress. How can I counter that stress so that I'm not causing damage to my body?
Yeah. So we'll continue on in this episode talking about some of the warning signs. And then, next week we're going to talk about what really contributes to burnout in the workplace and in life. And ultimately in the third episode, what do you do? How do you deal with it? What are the responsibilities of leaders, coworkers, and individuals to really tackle this problem? Because it is a problem, and I would say it's a crisis,
Yeah.
and it's leading to a mental health crisis, quite honestly. This, glorification of this excess work and exhaustion that you see going on in these workplaces. Oh, what a great worker, putting in all that extra time. He's a hero. He's here late every night. No, it's terrible.
Yeah. It's absolutely horrible. You
Yeah.
don't want to make it the norm where people are working overtime, they're working extra. That should really be used as one-offs.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the
Because it
abnormal
really
thing.
matters. There's
We
something
go
that
through
important.
Yeah, we go through these cycles or seasons where we know it's gonna be stressful. We know we have to work overtime, but then there are gonna be periods where we don't, where it's not stressful, where we don't have to work overtime. You have to keep that in balance because the human body can't keep up with that 24/7 pace that we try to keep it in, and with this age of technology where you've got all these different notifications on your phone and on your computer, you're got your work laptop and your personal laptop and your personal device and your work phone, all of these different devices giving you all these different notifications. It's just a lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot in everyday life. So to add on extra pressures and stressors at work unnecessarily is really not a good idea for your organization because it's going to overall impact your performance, your company's performance, as well as the performance of the individuals that work for that company.
Oh, yeah. It's a huge performance impactor. Humans aren't wired to do this. So warning signs, and you can see why this is so bad. People who are stressed out don't make great coworkers. They tend to have a short fuse. They anger a lot more easily. They might be hostile. When somebody comes asking for help, they might just completely overreact and go, no, come on, leave me alone. So, this is not a great environment if you need people to collaborate and work on stuff
Yeah,
because it tends to fray and damage relationships. That can have a lasting impact on the quality of the teamwork and collaboration taking place in the workplace.
yeah,
People who are highly stressed out, they're in a fog. If you notice yourself in a fog, you're unable to think clearly, you probably have excess cortisol. It's probably affecting your sleep. That inability to get a good night's sleep is a real warning sign. And this is all cumulative. And so as you get into these stress situations, it's easy to get burnt out because the stress has its own impacts. that tend to magnify what's happening and lead you towards burnout.
Yeah. When you find people having these loud emotional outbursts, so either it's very loud with anger and frustration and very high, or it's a very low response where people are crying and they're just frustrated. They're beating on the desk or they're having just these loud outbursts.
Mhm,
That's usually a signal that something is wrong. People that normally
mhm,
wouldn't be so, up today, down tomorrow. We know that there are some mental health conditions that
mhm.
cause people to be like that, but we're talking about people that are put in that position because of stress in life. So these people that have these outbursts or maybe have these crying fits or they have this deep, deep disappointment or they're just overall frustrated and you can hear it in their voice when they speak. There's this really sharp response every time you ask a question or every time you have to interact with that person. It's a little bit more challenging than it used to be. All of those are signs that something is wrong. That is not normal. And people really need to pay attention to what their body is telling them because these signs are there to help protect us. The signs are there so that we can do something about the things that are stressing us and get ourselves back into a much healthier state.
Yeah. And, listen, when you get stressed out, you get fatigued. If you're starting to feel really fatigued, you have trouble focusing and concentrating. You're anxious about stuff. You have a cup of coffee and it almost puts you over the edge because caffeine actually is really negative when people are getting stressed out. You start to lose interest in the things you're working on. You don't care about relationships. That's why this all leads to ultimately depression if you don't deal with it. It can lead to really severe depression in certain people. So these are signs, try to really focus on what's happening. You're rushing from one thing to another constantly. You're unable to get things done that, you want to get done and take care of in your personal life because you're so busy at work or vice versa. Your personal life is making it impossible for you to do what you have to do on the job. This is a warning sign that you're going to get stressed out. You've got to deal with that. You got to figure out a way to manage that. And, I don't know who you have to have conversations with, can be, conversations at home or at work, whatever it is, you got to look at these warning signs. And there are many of them. And
Yes.
you'll start to notice that this is a serious matter. I'm in a fog of work. I can't concentrate. I'm irritable. That short fuse that you feel ready to go off, that anxiousness as your muscles are tightening. And you got to take that seriously. It's a serious matter, and a lot of people are having mental health issues because they did get burnt out.
Yeah.
That's going to affect your relationships at home. If they were good, you get burnt out, you're not going to be fun to be with, and it is going to have a real impact, no question.
No question about it.
So, listen, we're here every Wednesday, 3 o'clock Eastern time. We're going to be really talking about in deeper detail, what contributes to this? What are the things that are happening in the workplace and life that are creating these warning signs? So that'll be the next episode. And then in the third episode, we'll really talk about, how do you deal with it? How do you overcome this? What are the things you should do to overcome it? What do you do as an organization? Because you really need to have a workplace that outperforms without burning people out. And that's the ideal. That's what we do at People Productive. We help companies create organizations that outperform without burning people out. Gets down to the human sciences. You've got to use them and employ them. You've got to be aware of all this stuff. It really, really matters. So I hope you could join us next week at 3 o'clock. We'll move on to episode 2 of this very important topic. And we look forward to seeing you there. Take
Yes.
care.
Bye for now.